Hello, everyone. Welcome to the first ever Nectara podcast. And Nectara's podcast is we're going to be exploring life as a ceremony and the deep and intentional integration process with psychedelics. And part of our offering here on the podcast will be speaking with amazing people like Leni Neumeier, who's a good friend of mine and lives in Kaslo, just like I do. And Leni has been a huge influence in my own integration process. And I'm so thrilled that we can join together here and listen to some of the wisdom she has to share. Hi, Leni.
Hi, Pascal. Thanks for having
Thanks for being here. Leni, what's your life story? How did you get here? And what's your relationship to psychedelics and integration?
Oh my God, that's a huge question.
I know.
Um, I grew up in the Bavarian Alps in Germany, and in my early 20s, I traveled to Canada and I stayed in Canada.
Mhm.
And at that time, I was mainly into like outdoor adventure, outdoor education. I was doing some racing. I was like in the world of, I guess, adrenaline junkies.
Yes. Yeah.
And then in my late 40s, all of a sudden I had this huge shift happening where I think the purpose of my life became quite clear. And I started studying Chinese medicine. So
Mhm.
I did a 5-year doctorate program and was absolutely fascinated by this ancient medicine um, and then started practicing in the Kootenays, where I've lived for the last 30 years.
Mhm.
So that's kind of the short version. And how I connected with psychedelics was with Richard Kay and Gillian Maxwell, who founded the Sentinel, and they have been friends of mine for the last 25 years.
Mhm.
And I started my clinic at the Sentinel, so where inevitably then was integrated into the whole plant medicine healing modality.
Mhm. Thanks for sharing. And yeah, Rich and Jillian have been a big part of our journey as well, and interfacing with psychedelics. And the Sentinel does amazing work with in the field. And so for you, when you got to the Sentinel, like your background with psychedelics was fairly minimal at the time.
Yeah, fairly minimal. I did not have any experience with plant medicine on that level, but also realized that this new healing modality called Chinese medicine is a beautiful framework for integrating, preparing, um, and connecting with plant medicines. hmm
Mhm. And things have changed a lot in 25 years. What have you noticed from when you arrived at the Sentinel on the Kootenays 20, 25 years ago or 30 years ago, and what's happened now with the emergence of psychedelics being kind of, on the stock market and the mainstream media? Will Smith has done ayahuasca 12 times, apparently. There's a basketball player who wrote a documentary around his experiences. Mike Tyson is part of a company. Things have changed a lot. And what have you noticed in the space from your personal perspective?
Yeah, 25 years ago here in the Kootenays, they have used plant medicine, especially cannabis and psilocybins, more on a recreational basis. And the
Mhm.
way I see it right now, it's more ceremonial and it is more focus on how can we heal with these beautiful plants? How can plants help us to reach higher potentials? And so I think what I see is now is like there's more intention around it,
Mhm.
and more education around the the beautiful aspects of plant medicine. I mean, I'm using a lot of plant medicine myself, like Chinese medicine. Chinese herbs are just like, I always call them my angels that are supporting us in our journey of dysfunction in the body. And so here in the kidneys, I think more and more people are arriving to show up for the inner healing with a more guided concept, with a concept of community as well, not doing it alone, right? Being held throughout the process. So I definitely have seen quite a shift in the last, let's say, 8 years.
Mhm. And what have you seen specifically in terms of, you mentioned intention, ceremony, and then I know Tara, we're always very passionate about integration. Like, what have you noticed in the emergence of integration as essential part of the experience? A lot of people like to enter these peak experiences, but the integration has often been, sometimes a second thought for a lot of people. What have you seen there in terms of evolution?
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, with a little bit of experience I have, like I've seen that I've treated numerous patients that did not receive any integration, um, who are who weren't held afterwards. Um,
Mhm.
and also what I've seen is like patients that went into plant ceremonies very deficient because in Chinese medicine, um, plant medicine is toxic heat, right? And toxic heat is
Mhm.
hard for the body to absorb, to integrate, and to deal with. And when the
Mhm.
body is extremely sensitive and or deficient, toxic heat can do damage. And so what I've seen is that either um, people have done a lot of plant medicine with deficiency in the body and then experienced even more hardship, or were kind of left hanging with no integration. So I've seen that, but I also have seen beautiful success stories where that was
Mhm.
not the case and people were held a lot, right? Like so both is happening. And I think that what you guys are doing and um what Richard and Jillian are doing, I mean, you are trying to create an experience that is conducive to healing, conducive to transformation.
Mhm. I'm curious to hear more about people that entered ceremonies with a deficiency in their body. Like, from your Eastern medicine perspective, like, how does someone prepare for a psychedelic experience from a mind, body, and soul perspective?
Hmm. Hmm.
And it depends for everyone, but kind of like general ideas around that, so that people out there that are entering maybe their first ceremonies, like, what's a good kind of framework to operate from to enter them, those ceremonies in a good way.
Hmm. Hmm. Right, right. Yeah, one of the things, I mean, here we go, I might feel a bit of bias because I'm a Chinese medicine practitioner, but have a support person to check your health, to make sure that your just physiological body is ready for this, is able to be in this yang world, right? Like when we are taking plant medicines, we are in the yang world. We are in the universal world as our realm. And when we are in this extreme yang world, from a Chinese medicine standpoint, we do need the equal or even more of the yin world, which is our body and our blood and our nourishment, that groundedness and root chakra, right? Root and sacral chakra. And so first I would say that somebody um should get checked out a little bit and have a diagnosis if this plant medicine is actually what the body can deal with, right? And if not,
Mm.
then preparing for it, like really building blood, and perhaps exercising and just coming to a little bit more of a healthier state, right? And then so that is very important in my mind, so that we can truly go into a ceremony with resources and not fully depleted. Mhm.
Oh, I'm sorry, got cut off there for a sec. But yes, that's really interesting. The idea of like yin and yang energy with psychedelics is something I don't hear a lot about. Could you give us an example of what would be like a yin medicine and what would be a yang medicine? Like I'm assuming something like ayahuasca is like super yang energy where it's kind of clubs you over the head. But
Yeah.
like how do you interface with that in terms of like, okay, I'm going to do ayahuasca or I'm going to do wachuma or I'm going to do maybe psilocybin. Like tell us more about that yin and yang quality of the medicines.
Mhm, mhm, mhm. Yeah, you nailed it there. And I've never taken ayahuasca. It's way too strong for me. um, and it's of course very personal as well. But you're already differentiating between more toxic heat and less toxic heat, right? And so more like stronger medicines and less strong medicines. And I'm not really not an expert in plant medicine, uh, but the yin aspect, when we were talking about yin, we were talking about the blood in Chinese
Mhm.
medicine. How nutritional is our blood to support our tissues, our organs, in order to look at this plant medicine that is extremely young and say, okay, we have resources to support this experience.
Mhm.
And so what makes blood be more nutritional or stronger, richer is good food, right? Is good timing of when we put food in our body and
Mhm.
how we absorb the food, um, integrating the central nervous system. So with that comes our ability to eat without stress, or our choice we make to eat without stress, so that we can absorb this good food that we are eating. And then, of course, the quality of the food builds blood. Organic
Mhm.
food over processed food, right?
Right.
So
Yeah, it's
so
interesting.
we're building blood. We're building yin with diet, right? We're building yin with lifestyle, right? There's like also this concept of exercise, of course. We're building yin with being in parasympathetic through our meditation, right? Through our conscious awareness of honoring the body in its highest potential, right? And that's very closely linked to self-love, of course. And I love myself so much that I only put the best in my food under the best circumstances, right? And that builds
Mhm.
yin. And then when we go into with that richness of yin, of blood and well-nourished organs and tissues, then we are experience a plant medicine with a good foundation.
Right. And you, in our sessions, a lot of times you mention like balancing the inputs of the outputs. Um, and in this case, it seems like, maybe the heavier the ceremony or the therapy session you're going to be doing, the more you should be much more careful about the inputs inside your body. So if you're going to do a 5-day retreat with ayahuasca, you probably want to take weeks ahead of time to really dial your body and your blood and your breath and your tissues so that you can prepare. And um, is it is it safe to say then that the preparation is really part of the integration, really, because the way you enter the experience is how you're going to be leaving it, really, and how you're really going to get the most out of it is really by nourishing yourself beforehand.
Yeah, for sure. I 100% agree with that. Um, I mean, traditionally, when you look at ceremonies, fasting ceremonies, or plant medicine ceremonies, people prepared themselves for a long period of time. They have been connecting with a shaman for years on end before they even started taking the medicine, before they were allowed to take the medicine, right? There was a huge spiritual preparation. There was a huge mental
Mm.
preparation. There was a huge body preparation. And then that plant medicine was given not as frequently either, like only once a year, right? Or once
Mm.
every 5 years. And in between that, you really integrated that experience to every little fraction of it, right? Like
Right.
you really went deep into it. Mhm.
Mhm.
A big part around that, I personally find, is fasting as well, right? That there is like a fasting program before you go into your plant medicine experience, to really allow for that emptiness, for that plant medicine um to express itself in this potential of emptiness, in this potential of opportunity. Um,
Mm.
and I personally find that sometimes plant medicines are taken so frequently that um, do we really create space in order to process
Mm.
what happened?
Right. That's true. Does happen fairly often, and I've done that before. Um, especially in the first years of my healing journey, is like, oh, let's do more because more is better, right? Like the more healing I get, the better I get. But eventually my body just told me, like, you know what, you need to sit down, chill out a little bit, and integrate. Uh, and that was the best lesson I've ever had. It was like, don't do psychedelics, don't do medicine. Um, and I got that message because I wasn't listening to my own body. So when we do sessions together, a lot of times you ask me like, Pascal, what does your body want? And so for someone, yes, you can get help from a consultant or a doctor or a therapist or a really good friend, but there's also the inner wisdom of your own body that people can be like, body, what do you want at this time? And um, tell us more about like this concept of questioning the body and scanning and asking questions, like the inner emperor or empress is what you call it sometimes, right? Like that's a really good tool for people out there.
Yeah, thank you, Pascal, for opening that subject. It's one of my favorite subjects. It's that listening to your emperor or empress, right? Like in Chinese medicine, the emperor or the heart is the emperor of the body, or the empress of the body, because every meridian either directly or indirectly connects with the heart. So when the heart is broken or injured or not attended to or guarded or sad or angry, like all hell breaks loose. And
Mhm.
so this somatic way of listening to the heart, this dialogue and conversation between your brain and the heart, I find extremely important, because our society is so brain driven, right? We were raised to be intelligent. We were raised to be um, to be to conceptualize things and analyze things, right? We were not trained to truly listen to our heart. And
Uh,
so this concept of listening to the heart and preparing for this this intelligence that the tissue has is very, very important. And I always talk about the truth. What is the truth? And you have heard me saying the brain is a little bit of a bullshit machine, right? Whereas the heart is the truth, right?
Feeling-
We get the brain out of the way. And I love the brain, of course, right? The brain is very important. But when we start giving the brain a ticket to Mexico to hang on the beach, and you just have a conversation with the heart, then we're talking. And then we are talking to this truth of, who am I? And who do I need to be for myself? Right.
Mhm.
And so this this emperor or this empress is our soul. It's the expression of our soul within our body. And so I find it so important to connect with that deep heart frequency, this
Mhm.
this center of our magnetic field, in order to make decisions for ourselves that are filled with a purpose, why we are here, and not just a reasoning like the brain would give us. And so yeah, that listening of the body is very, very important. And physiologically, I mean, we do have these mini brain that are going down our spinal cord. They're called ganglions, and they are small little bundles of nerves that give us information. When we are in this state of meditation, this state of relaxation, this state of safety. Like we can connect with those
Mhm.
very intuitive central nerve system sensations that we can have a dialogue with, a conversation, and really hone into this truth of ourselves. Mm.
Mhm. And there's a lot of wisdom in that. I've experienced it myself, like Leni telling me every time I go there because I have body pain. Is like, what does your body need? And then I ask myself, and my brain is like overriding that sometimes because I'm such a brain heavy person typically. But I'd say one of the most transformative practices I've been implementing in my life, in my integration process, is waking up in the morning and connecting with my heart, um,
Mm.
and listening to it and connecting with that first before I go out in the world and do things. And there's a lot of wisdom in that, and just slowing down and intuitively tap into that center of intelligence. So thank you for that, Leni, and thank you for sharing with others as well. And how it can help people with intention setting and preparation, um, and just basically integrating their experiences because they've created the space for it. And another big factor for integration that we've talked about is the seasons. And when you first mentioned this to me, I was quite astonished by just how much depth and meaning there is in the concept of aligning the seasons with the practices that we do, or aligning the seasons with the medicines that we're doing, or aligning the seasons with um, our integration process. And we live in a four-season climate in the Kootenays here, where like the winters are really wintry and the summers are really summery. And then the two seasons in between have their own distinct like levels of moisture and the rainfall and sunlight, and everything changes with the seasons. And how do we relate that to integration and psychedelics and healing in general?
Right, right. Yeah, like I mean, maybe we should go a little bit into that 5 element theory, if that is okay with you, and learn a little bit more how Chinese medicine is actually looking at the season from an elemental standpoint. So, so in Chinese medicine, we of course have the yin yang theory, right, which comes out of the Tao. So we have a yin and a yang, or you can call it a minus and a plus. And out of the concepts of yin and yang come the 5 elements. And in Chinese medicine, it's the wood element, the fire element, the earth element, the metal element, and the water element. And they're all interconnected into a pattern of sacred geometry. And we can maybe, for the listeners, we can put up a chart at one point to demonstrate that. But when we talk about seasons, we're talking that the wood energy is the spring. So the spring goes dynamically upwards in its energy, right? So we are talking about more light. We are talking about the liver and the gallbladder, like, so we are talking about this concept of vitality, of like new beginnings. We are talking about the concept of extra energy to purge, right? So this is the
Mhm.
time, for example, when I do my liver gallbladder cleanse with my patients, right? It's because the seasons are helping us to get rid of old stuff from the winter, and the seasons are inviting us to eat bitters, right? Like that's why
Mhm.
mugwort grows in the spring, not in the fall. It's just like to really purge out and get rid of toxins, right?
Mhm.
And then we are going into the fire element, which is from an organ standpoint, the heart and the small intestine. And we are talking about the meridians and the organs, of course. But then the summer, it's energy is going outwards, right? And we're eating more raw food. We are eating more um, cold foods because it's hot outside. Like the body can afford to eat cold foods, right?
Like,
In the winter, if you eat cold foods, you can totally damage your digestive system, right?
mhm.
And then in the fall, we have more this inward spiraling energy. We're preparing for winter. And in this inward spiraling, that's the element of metal, right? We are eating more foods that are pungent, like the onions, for example, or we are eating warmer foods all of a sudden, not so much like many big salads. Where in the summer we have huge salads. We don't care. We can afford it,
Huge.
right? And then of course in the winter we are eating more the the stews and the soups and no salads, and
Mhm.
which is then the element of water. And earth, the element of earth, which represents the spleen and stomach, then um, is integrated in all of them a little bit,
Mhm.
especially just before the new season starts. That's usually a concept of earth, right? And and so there are also these concepts around when we heal earth, we are attending to all of the other ones, right? So
Mhm.
in preparation, dependent on when people are actually taking a plant ceremony experience, then we see what season are we in, right? Or like what is conducive to nourishing the body in preparation, and also after the ceremony, as integration, what can nourish me the most in order to really integrate the experience. And so
Mhm.
depends on when the ceremony is, depends on what what season we are in. We would support the body in a different way. And I also think that for example, you take one one plant ceremony, let's say we take psilocybins, it will be a different experience in the spring than it is in the summer or in the fall or in the winter, right? The plant
Mhm.
medicine itself knows the energetics of your body that is represented, um, that represents the season. We feel different in the winter than we feel in the summer, right? So the plant itself synergistically connects different with our cells, with our receptors. And so the seeds are very important to look at.
Mhm. Yeah, it's fascinating. I find it fascinating, and we'll go into a higher level even in the seasons in a moment. But I'm really curious about the seasons and how it relates to plant medicines and also the body type. So, how does the body type of each person change their relationship to seasons and psychedelics? I know I have a different body type than my partner, and we like what works for us doesn't work for both of us. So how does someone like deepen their knowledge about that? Is it like reading books, or like how would someone get educated on like what could work better for their body than someone else's?
Right. That's a very tricky question because it, like you said, it's very individual. And in Chinese medicine, you know, looking at the five elements, like there are people that are more wood people, there are people that are more fire
Mhm.
people, and more earth, metal, or water people, right? It depends on what your your body type is. But often when, like, for example, what I see often when we have like an earth type person, for example, earth type people are very grounded, some of them are a little bit heavier, right? Like it's a very different body type. And
Mhm.
the pathology around earth type people, when we're too earthy, we become lethargic. We become slow, right? We can't
Mhm.
really absorb food properly anymore, right? We're gaining weight, right? So
Mhm.
when we are trying to heal and we are in a specific season, let's say for an earth type person, we are in the earth season, we need to get more dynamic in the body, and we need to add more wood or more fire in order
Yeah.
to create more momentum, more yang qi, because earth is very yin, right? So it
Yeah.
depends on what type you have, and then
Mhm.
what medicine you would
Mhm.
offer, right? So how to educate is more so, yeah, work with if five element theory is something you're really interested in, work with a Chinese medicine practitioner that can explain it and help you to really find the right style that is
Mhm.
conducive for your type, right?
Right. And one thing I have interest about learning too today is, um, can you give us an example? Because I think Tara would say like less psychedelics, more integration, but there's a part of that that is also about harm reduction. So can you give us an example of a situation where someone might be exploring the idea of doing a psychedelic journey, but really shouldn't because, their body type and the season and the medicine are not quite aligning. Like maybe someone has too much fire in their body and do ayahuasca during summer, for example. Would that be something that's reason enough to not embark on the journey, or there would be like a preparation that could maybe best suit that overlap of different variables? Can you give us an example of a situation
Mhm.
like that so that people out there know like
Mm.
what to look for if they're trying to analyze if it's a good decision or not for their body?
Mhm. 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 Yeah. You already gave an example there, which is um, again very personal. If a fiery person with a lot of yang has enough resources to go into this very yang world as a fiery person, as long as they have enough resources, and if that is what they need, then I support that. It's more so when we see deficiency, right? Like when a person
Mm.
has let's say we are looking at a wood type person, like, so wood type person, the archetype is high achievers, and I see that quite a bit in clinic, especially women, right? Like women that have been extremely successful in their life, extremely athletic in their life, like running
Right.
marathons, like being a CEO of a company, having three children, and being a wife, right? And
Mm.
then wanting to go deeper into the body. And I see where this wood type person is already has used up a lot of that wood and not nourished with more earth or more water or more metal. And so I would then rather recommend to add more earth in preparation
Mm.
for a plant ceremony, so to have the resources, right? And in regards to season, let's say we have a person that is more wood, more high achiever, and wanting to do a plant ceremony during the wood element, during the springtime, right? Then even more so, it is important to add that element of earth and that resource of yin to
Mhm.
have a healthy experience, right? They will have an
Mm.
experience no matter what. It's just that we don't damage, right? And that the body can really hold space for that very spiritual experience.
Mhm.
Does that answer
Right.
your question?
Yeah, it does. Thank you. I know we could talk about this for hours and hours, and but on a high level, it does really answer it really well. Um, and the one concept that we've talked about a lot too during our appointments together is this concept of being whole. And so pretty much all of us that embark on psychedelic journeys, like we're on a journey of feeling wholeness, of thriving, of harmony. From the Eastern medicine perspective, what is it to be whole? What does that mean to you?
hmm hmm Yeah, I like from our wisdom that has been passed down for written for over 2,000 years. Um, Again, it's the concept of yin and yang, balancing yin and yang, balancing the five elements, and um, and um, understanding the eight influences. And eight
Exactly.
this is the relation of yin and yang, hot and cold. Um, then interior, exterior, right? Like what is happening on the exterior and what is happening on the interior.
Uh,
Um, and we're looking at dryness and wetness, right? And so when we start bringing in this Western philosophy, this Eastern philosophy, to be whole is to balance all of this, not have too much of either. It's that middle way, like that
yeah.
Taoist way where you're
Mm,
um, not too much wood, not too much fire, earth, um, metal or water, right? And from especially with psychedelics, because we are more going in, we're going into this emotional and spiritual world, right? Is looking
mm,
at the emotions that each of those elements are carrying. Like if our emotion, that's often a reason why we go into plant medicine, is sadness, right? Then
mm,
that is represented with the element of metal, right? Sadness and grieving. But then there's also this concept of virtues, which is acceptance, right? So we can use as a in preparation to
mm,
a plant medicine, we can use that Eastern five element approach in order to really set the stage for a answer that the plant medicine can give you in this theme of your journey, of your ancestors, yourself, and your future generations, right? When we
mm,
look at anger, we're looking more at the element of wood, and the virtues are compassion and empathy for yourself first, right? We have a
mm,
lot of compassion, empathy for others, but do we really have that for ourselves? Right? And when we look at anxiety, we're looking at the element of fire, and the virtue, the inner medicine we have in Chinese medicine is joy and happiness, really choosing happiness and joy as part of our medicine we have on the inside. Right? For earth, it is the
yes,
emotion of always worrying and overthinking, and the medicine is to surrender. And the fifth element is water, and it's this what we see so much, especially right now during COVID, and is fear, is existential fear, right? Like the
mm,
existential fear is rising by the minute in our society, and the medicine that we are carrying inside of us in this element of water is our intuition, really listening to that deep connection to our intuition, which was given to us by our ancestors, and connecting
mm,
with that again, which the plant medicine is fantastic to um to connect
mm,
with on that level.
right.
Mhm.
That's fascinating. So what I'm hearing is there's a lot of internal communication with your body and your your inner self, really, in terms of preparation, integration, and as the external, your environment, the seasons, the energies, and the place you're at in the world. Um, but there's also a higher level than that, which is the connection to your universe and the connection to your North Star, like you say. Um, can you tell us more about that? Because to me, it sounds like there's there's three. I'm sure there's more layers that I am not aware of, but there's three really deep layers that one can connect with in terms of integration, preparation, and living life. Really, can you tell us more about that universal higher consciousness piece in relation to psychedelics?
And this is, of course, very personal, the way I perceive it. And it's often like everybody has their own little concepts around it. But I want to start answering this question with the way one of my masters is looking at healing. And he said the lowest form of healing is healing disease.
Mhm.
The next level of healing is healing emotions, and the highest level of healing is healing consciousness. Right? And that's a huge statement that Jeffrey
You-
Yuen, an 88th generation Taoist monk from New York, is offering here. This is like a huge statement. And when we are going into this teaching of emotions and higher consciousness, of course, the plant medicine is giving us more access to that, right? Just because our brain is not in this normal state of our day-to-day living, we are actually exploring other parts. And so this spiritual practice that that I highly recommend to be part of in your own authentic way, that non-linear thinking and that connection to the North Star, meaning to the universe, is I find essential for us humans to be safe.
Mhm.
Safe. So, and I always tell my patients there's no protocol on how to do that. Like I personally, I love kiteboarding, right? I love being out in like horrendous winds on Kootenay Lake, and that's where I feel the Tao the best, right? And for another person, they're saying, "Are you nuts? This is not working for me." But that's where I feel spirit, right? That's where I feel connected to the great divine, where I feel extremely vulnerable, and yet I need to be so present, right? Like this is my way of connecting, which would Pascal, that probably wouldn't work for you so much. So,
Well, you'd be
so
surprised.
you
I
have
like to
diff-
try it.
yeah. So there is this exploration of self that we need to commit to and find out who am I?
Mhm. Yeah,
Like
that's
and
beautiful.
yeah, and I mean ancient cultures um thought that the stars are the guidance for our life. It's not us who make the decisions,
Mhm.
right? It's actually the stars who make it. And we are just doing what they tell us to do. And to me, when I heard that the first time, I thought, oh my God, this is actually the ultimate way of um, the ultimate way of being spiritual, because you're putting full trust into the universe, full trust, right? You don't even think about adding anything with your brain.
Right.
So
Yeah, it's like entering flow states almost is what I'm hearing is
yeah,
um understanding where to like what makes you connect to that higher self. And that could be practices like maybe journaling, maybe it's meditating, maybe it's yoga, maybe it's playing water scooter with your son or playing Lego with your son, or um maybe doing a little bit of strategic road mapping. That's a big part of what I like to do to connect with my higher self is, envisioning the future, if not from a place of the brain, but more of the place from the heart and making a ceremony out of that. So
mhm,
um, that
yeah,
helps me connect to my North Star and then helps me kind of align like the everyday stuff more in line with the greater kind of purpose that may or may not be dictated by stars. Um, but definitely like adds a lot of richness and authenticity in everyday life. And deciding if I want to do medicine or not. Those higher level anchor points are really useful for aligning action. Um,
Mm.
and we've talked
Yeah.
about intention. We've talked about intention. We've talked about wisdom. Let's talk a bit about practice. And as something you said on our introduction call, like a few weeks ago, you mentioned the idea of continuous integration. And I love that idea because obviously at Nectara, we talk about every day is a ceremony and that everything that we do is integration. But what is continuous integration?
Mhm, mhm. Yeah, this is kind of like often difficult because you have to do the work, right? Nobody can do it for you.
Well, there's no previous up there, bro.
Yeah, I know. I know. This is like that full commitment, right? And I also understand that, our life is busy, right? Our life is busy, and I like what just came to me is like one of my teachers at Chinese medicine school. I asked her if she's doing her qigong every day, right? Because she was always positive, and he was just like had so much energy. I was like, "When are you doing your qigong?" And her answer was, "I'm doing it right now."
Mhm.
Right. So the practice is in the present moment. The practice is in the present moment, that awareness of what choice we're making in our transformation. And so that is one that can always be there and can always be chosen if you decide to. It's that present moment of living in your heart, and if you're truly in your heart, you're living from this point of kindness and compassion and love, right?
Mhm.
Abundance, total abundance and humbleness and even vulnerability, right?
Mhm.
And courage. And so the practice lies in the present moment where we have the most influence to do, to make a shift, right? So that is like, that is definitely the best way to integrate. But then we get sidetracked, right? We get sidetracked. We get triggered in our trauma state. We get into our little world of worries and fear, and so then we need to kind of like have some tools. And I think the like really nice tools are, you mentioned before, meditations. There's so many on YouTube that you can choose from 10 minutes to like 8-hour meditations, like guided meditations that are focusing on your inner light, your inner abundance. You can use binaural beats. Like if you feel like you get triggered or anxiety comes on, it's just to bring the frequency down. Okay. The other practice that I like is Qigong, like a basic Qigong. You can do yoga, just even sometimes like doing 5 minutes of sun salutations makes a big difference in
Mhm.
your day. Right?
Yeah.
And then being on the table, being supported by a practitioner in whatever form it is. Like there's so many beautiful modalities. Doesn't have to be Chinese medicine. It can be
Mhm.
craniosacral therapy. It can be biodynamics. It can be osteopathy. Right? Like finding a practitioner that you resonate with, that can hold you, and you can truly sink into your own body's vulnerability to be whole, to be safely whole,
Mhm.
right? So that's definitely
Yeah.
something I highly recommend. And we all have to do that. We all have to be on the table. Yeah, those are like just a few examples. And then, of course, the practice of food is very important because we are
Mhm.
what we eat, right? Really bringing in the wisdom of food.
Right.
Mm.
Yeah, there's a lot of depth to practices, and everyone will have their own kind of uh, preferred methods and philosophies they'll follow. But like almost all of them, if not all of them, are valid in some way. I have a question. Are you doing qigong right now? Are you practicing right
Uh,
now?
I'm trying to. My heart
You're
is
trying
pretty
to.
open, I have to say, like just answering your beautiful questions. And um, I'm trying to. I'm trying to. Like, here we go. I just had to check in with my body. I'm a little bit nervous just because I'm really doing this not very often.
Well, it's my
But
first time too, so we're doing it together.
together, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and
Yeah, no,
that's a great yeah, that's a great segue into community. And I one of the first sessions I did with you, you drew a little triangle with arrows, and it was the cycle of change. It was intention, action, and then support. And I remember thinking like, well, I've been really good at intention, action, but like no support whatsoever because I had this like lone wolf attitude of just like, oh, I can handle this. I got this. And I remember my life changing when I saw the little arrow that said support. And then I was like, whoa, I can ask for support. Like there's people that I can actually help ask for help, and it's okay to ask for help. Can you talk more about that cycle of change? Because it's simple, but to me, it just like it was a new world that opened up because of that. Like a lot of people don't ask for support.
yeah, yeah. This is kind of like a concept that I learned at it was a 5 rhythms workshop at Hollyhock, actually. It
Mhm.
was a leadership course. And we talked about impact. We talked about how can we have impact for ourselves. Okay. And the facilitator offered this simple concept of the impact triangle,
Yeah.
where when you have a clear intention and you are creating action to support that clear intention, plus if you have support, there's an extreme high probability that you're moving forward with impact.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I've been using this concept for my patients when there's no guidance, no intention, because some of them are so depleted or sick that they need a handrail to hold on to and say, okay, how can I move forward now, right? And
Mhm.
and when we start modeling this triangle of clear intention, action, and support, we could model all different kind of things. We can model
Um,
my clear intention is to eat better. What's the action around it, and who supports me? And with support, it's not necessarily. It has to be your husband or your wife or a practitioner. It can also be like the great divine. It could be your spirit animal. It could be
mhm.
the lords of the Akashic records, right? It could be Mother Teresa if you believe in Mother Teresa or the Dalai Lama.
Got
And I've had patients that made topographical maps of where the impact triangles were all these different like kind of mountains with contour
it.
intervals. And
That's
that
cool.
was the mountains they want to climb and want to conquer is like this clear intention. I want my heart to be more open, for example, right? I want to think more with my heart, right? What's your
Mhm.
action around it and who supports you? So that's kind of like the impact triangle that helps us to just have a little bit more of a focus and on what we want to do with all of this, right?
Mhm. Yeah,
Mm.
beautiful. Um, we have questions from the community. They're kind of like rapid fire questions. I'd love to have you again to expand on some of these concepts because I feel like each one of them can be expanded into a larger conversation. But um, let's go into the rapid fire questions because they are related to all the things we just talked about. And I'll start with the most fun one. Um, if you could have 1 minute to speak to the entire world, what would you say? It's a tough question to answer. Maybe it's so imagine the whole world
What
in
to
front of
say?
you right now, and they're like, Leni Neumeier, we need some wisdom, or tell us a joke, or whatever you'd like to share with us. What would you like to say?
Yeah, the first thing that came to my mind is like be kind to each other. Kind
Mhm.
kindness. Like be kind to each other. There's so much going on right now, like with the Ukraine, with COVID, with so many things, right? Like just be kind to each other.
Yeah, that's a good one. You can
Mhm.
never go wrong with being kind, is what I found.
Mhm.
Radical kindness. I think I like the addition of radical kindness in there, because kindness can sometimes mean like you're kind of rolling over and stuff like Jello, but with radical kindness, you say things that need to be said when they need to be said. So
Yeah.
I'm quite
Yep.
like that
Yeah.
combination of words. Um, Here's a good one too. What's your favorite classic Eastern philosophical text?
Um, well, the most, I think, can I have two?
Let me consult with the Akashic records. Yes, you can.
Okay, so the first one is the Huangdi Neijing, which is one of our ancient books on all different kind of concept of Chinese medicine. It's the basis of Chinese medicine. It's a compilation of two books, the Ling Shu and the Su Wen, and it gives us this conversation between the Yellow Emperor and Chibo, his royal doctor, on where the Yellow Emperor is asking a question about why do we have four seasons, and Thibaut is answering these questions in this highly philosophical way. So this book is the basis of Chinese medicine, and no matter how many times you read it, you find new things that come out of it. And then yeah, here we go. I mean, more and more books come into my mind.
Only two.
Right. Let's just like of course the Tao Te Ching is another one, but let's not
My
use
favorite
that
book.
for now.
Yeah.
But the other book I love so much is the Shanghan Lun, which is written by Chang Chongqing, and it's a herbal book. It's a herbal book. And I love the introduction so much that talks about, and that book was written, I think, 1500 years ago, where Zhang Zhongqing is just bitching about Chinese medicine doctors to be greedy and just trying to make money and create the business opportunity. And the medicine is about helping people, right?
Right.
So this greediness that we are seeing now in medicine, where it's not about the patients, about how much money you're making, existed at that time too. And Zhang Zhongqing lived during a pandemic and composed these and researched all these different kind of beautiful herbal formulas based on how the disease progresses into the body. And so it's a beautiful herbal book that has a lot of commentary too from different doctors along different dynasties in China. But it's a fascinating book. It's fun for me to contemplate on because I use it for my patients. And yeah, here we go. Huangdi Neijing, definitely, and then the Shanghan Lun.
Cool. Well, if you come back again, then you'll get two more you can talk about.
Okay, thank you.
What are your thoughts on, and these are all questions from our community. I'm just reading them verbatim. What are your thoughts on mind-body dualism?
Super important. Mind, body, spirit is the trinity of health, right? So when our body is healthy, we have the opportunity to really enter a clear mind. And with that clear mind and body, we can enter spirit. And there's this other concept around, it's more in astrology, where we are talking about the crystal palace, which is pretty much the area between the pineal gland and the pituitary gland in the brain. So when that connection is established, we actually have that through meditation. We have that ability to connect with the North Star, with the Polaris, right? And in that lies then that world of higher consciousness. So only when the body is healthy and the mind is healthy, we can go into that spiritual world. So body, mind, spirit is extremely necessary for us to reach those higher levels of consciousness and
Hmm.
feel those too, right? Because
Hmm.
we are souls that have had, thousands of years of experience, right? And there's lots of trauma in that higher consciousness that needs to be reconciliated.
Right. A never-ending journey of healing.
Yes,
So
it will never end.
it will never end, and that's part of the fun. Um, what is your spiritual, he or she said, practice like? Like, what is your kind of everyday integration, um, mind, body, and soul practices?
Yeah. Um, so I love being with my patients. I really find that the work I do is a little bit of a meditation for me when I'm working on my patients, because I um I try to connect with their energy. Right? I try not to absorb it as much as possible, but I try to connect with it, which requires me to be as clear and open as possible. Right. So,
Hmm.
I would integrate this world of healing as part of my practice for myself, and my patients are my healers. Right. They're my healers. And so that's one. And then I like having my cup of tea in bed in the morning. And that's part of my meditation. I do that on purpose, like that gratitude, that abundance, to start the morning with warmth of the tea, right? Of the herb of the tea, and really, really looking into nature. Like, I am fortunate to have a beautiful bedroom where I can look into the forest, I can look onto the mountains. And so that beginning of the day from the east is one of my daily practices. But then I also, and my boyfriend can confirm that, like, I need to be out in nature a lot. So I ski tour in the winter. Like I said, I kiteboard. I try to be in nature as much as possible. And then my dog, my dog is my healer as well. Like, she's so in the present moment that she's teaching me also, and making me practice to be in the present moment.
Hmm.
Since I do have quite a few patients and I'm quite busy, I try to really not overdo and create this big protocol, just because that's not who I am. I'm a snake in Chinese medicine. Snakes are just wiggling through their way, and they are hiding, kind of thing. So with my personality and with my um constitution, right? This works well for me, and I hope I can stay healthy that way.
Right on. Yeah, that's good to know. Um, and here's a good question as well, and it's the last one. Um, when it comes to physical pain and illness, is it possible to bring the body back into balance with TCM and herbs alone? Or is there a point of no return when the body becomes too sick and modern medical interventions are the only way? And I'll have a follow-up questions to that.
Yeah, it's yeah, this is a very interesting question, because we see X-rays where joints are deformed and people are not in pain, and we see X-rays of perfectly fine joints and people are in pain.
Mhm.
And so, and it depends. I have to say, it depends how damaged the body is, right? I do have patients that live with chronic pain because of many surgeries, of many accidents, um, and also um, because of their constitution. And there we manage pain to the best ability with herbs, with acupuncture, with tuning forks, with cranial sacrum therapy, and so on, right? But I also find that the more we are practicing that body mind spirit connection, the more space we create in our meridians. And when our meridians are open, our tissue is going to be nourished with qi and blood, and that then reduces pain. So, old Chinese saying, you've heard me say that many times, Pascal, that qi through no pain, qi go through pain, right?
Right.
So with acupuncture, we can promote the flow of qi in the 12 regular meridians and the 8 extraordinary meridians. We can do that with lifestyle and with the commitment of the patient to integrate spaciousness inside of the body with meditation, with not working too much, not working too little, with regulating the emotions, with looking at the virtues and the medicines we are carrying inside. I believe we can reduce a lot of pain. And sometimes I'm just, sharing my own story where I had a climbing accident when I was 17. And after 35 years, and I broke the head of my femur. And after 35 years, I was in excruciating pain for almost 10 years, where then, and I tried everything, and I decided on getting a hip replacement, which I did in 2016, where Western medicine was shining, right? And it was absolutely shining. So sometimes we need to make decisions that are helping us to repair something. Even so, I would say the body is not a car. But at the same time, there is this concept of we are in 2022 now, and we have modern medicine that is helping. But along that 10-year of pain, I've done a lot of inner cultivation, a lot of learning about myself, learning about my ancestors, learning about my personality, my soul, my body, mind, spirit connection. And that helped me, I think, to recover really well from that hip surgery, which I pass on to all the patients that come. Can you prepare me for my hip surgery? I just like, yeah, there are emotions in there. You got to look at it.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. So pain is an interesting subject. Pain is a great topic to talk about, and pain is your master that will also be a healer.
Yeah, and the two different perspectives on health and health modalities of the Eastern and Western, they complement each other. Like my friend, one of my friends went through cancer a few years ago, and he was like, I was so grateful for the Western medical system because it's really good at saving my life, basically. And so
Yeah.
I think both work together. Like and do you think there's a bit of a yin and yang quality to the Western and Eastern medicine, or is that, would you say the Western is a bit more yang and the Eastern is a bit more yin, or is that not really a thing?
I think I don't know. Let me think about
Right. Perfect.
yeah, like of course, everything is yin and yang, and there's always yin within yang and yang within yin, right?
Yeah, right. Yeah, it's in
Chinese
everything.
medicine can be extremely yang. Think about the herb fuzi, which is an agonite, which is the root of the monkshood, and it's like the hottest herb you can ever imagine. It's the youngest herb you can think of, right?
Okay.
So there's always a yin and a yang side within everything. Yeah. The Western medicine has a more scientific approach. And the Eastern medicine, now slowly but surely is also scientifically proven, but it also puts into the consideration that the body is alive and it's not a cadaver. And it also puts into the consideration that our emotions are influencing our health and our body, which is really hard to measure. It's really hard to measure, and so it's really difficult to. Yeah, I mean, we're starting to accept placebo, right? The effect of placebo. So I think eventually, I hope they will merge together. I hope so.
Cool. And maybe we can all elevate into a higher consciousness and dissipate into the light together.
That'd be nice.
That'd be nice. Well, thank you so much, Leni, for discussing with us today and sharing some of your wisdom. Love to have you on again to talk more about these things and the Eastern perspective on psychedelics and integration. And in the meantime, I'll invite everyone to stay tuned for the next episode where we'll be talking to my best friend, David Gomes, who's a mindfulness teacher, although he wouldn't like to call himself a teacher. He is a teacher. And he'll have some interesting perspectives to share on mindful integration and living life every day as a ceremony. So thank you very much for tuning in, and stay tuned for more. Thank you, everyone. Take care.
Thank you.
Bye, Leni.
And